We're back on the Scott Hennen Show on the Common Sense Club on an open phone Friday edition of the program. One of the best in the United States Congress. Joining us next for an update on the effort to stop the bleeding. U.S. debt will top $13.6 trillion this year, estimated to climb to $19.6 trillion, according to a Treasury Department report to Congress by 2015. Lawmakers got that on Friday last week, by the way. Isn't it interesting how the data dump on Friday continues? It's when all the bad news goes. The hope is you'll miss it while you're headed for the lakes over the weekend. Congressman Paul Ryan back with us on the Scott Hennen Show on the Common Sense Club to tell us how he stopped the bleeding. Congressman, nice to have you back. How you doing?
Yeah. Good to be with you again, Scott.
Yeah, I was just reading some of the transcripts from one of your listening sessions, and I got a kick out how you identify your constituents. Paul Ryan's employer.
Well, that's how I view the relationship.
Yeah.
My employers and I'm their employee. That's the way it works.
Yeah, no kidding. We were reading one of the quotes of Thomas Jefferson earlier, talking about today's is an insightful one, saying, "Cherish therefore the spirit of our people, keep alive their attention, do not be too severe upon their errors, but reclaim them by enlightening them. If once they become inattentive to the public affairs, you and I, Congress and assemblies, judges and governors, shall all become wolves." So as long as those employers are paying attention, which we're seeing in this robust Tea Party movement right now, it makes a big difference in Congress, doesn't it?
I'll say. I just did 10 town hall meetings in Wisconsin, just this last week during our Memorial Day recess, and people are really coming out. Record crowds we're getting, and people are really, really upset and concerned about the direction of our country and just the pending bankruptcy. And if you look at my PowerPoint, I think I'll put it up online, I think, today or tomorrow on my Facebook page. I talk about how the European debt crisis is really a cautionary tale for us. And if you look at these debt numbers you just mentioned, we are up there in the stratosphere with the pigs, with Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Spain, Greece. And so we are on the same trajectory. We're in the same ballpark as they are. Now, we've got some different advantages that they don't have to fight it. But if we stay on the trajectory we are on, we will have our own bona fide debt crisis with the world's reserve currency. And the future is very ugly under that kind of a situation. Debasement of your currency, inflation, higher interest rates, much higher taxes. What the fiscal authorities are telling us in Washington, all the nonpartisan fiscal authorities, is for the first time in the history of this country, we're going to give the next generation a lower standard of living. That's where we are right now. That's the path we were already on before the health care bill passed and before all this other stuff got passed by this Congress, which is seeing this sea of red ink and doubling down with more.
And by the way, I see now a score of the financial reform legislation in the House adds $20 billion a year to the deficit as well.
Well, and that bill, basically, I would argue, it takes the same philosophy that was applied to healthcare, the same philosophy that was applied to energy with cap and trade, and now applies it to just another sector of our economy, the financial sector. Government should be the director of the sector. It should be the largest determining force in it. And we're going to take this too big to fail theory or problem and amplify it. You're going to have about 20 Fannie Mae and Freddie Macs under this new system that's being created, instead of reforming Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which was pushed aside in this effort, and it's not even part of this reform. What
happened to pay-as-you-go, by the way? That fraud that supposedly Democrats were, we're not going to do any spending unless we pay for it.
Well, it's been waived. The thing is, you can waive it, and so it's a rule you can turn on and turn off at the whim of Speaker Pelosi or Majority Leader Reid. And so they've been waiving it for a lot of these things. When they wrote the bill, they decided to put a lot of stuff in the rules that so it would never apply. And when it does apply, they just raise taxes. And so what PAYGO has really become a synonym for is just raising taxes. And that's basically what its practical effects have been, and that's why people like me are proposing spending caps instead of PAYGO. The problem we have in Washington is not a revenue problem, it's a spending problem. And so why don't we attack the problem instead of just asking for more revenues from taxpayers to fuel all this additional spending? We keep doing that, and we will become a cradle-to-grave social welfare state so fast, you won't even recognize this country.
And that's the clarion call that I think lit the match that lit the Tea Party movement and everything else. It's spending, isn't it?
It is spending. It's so very clear. I've been doing this stuff for a while. I've got this plan I put out there, America's Roadmap. You can go to my website, AmericanRoadmap.org, which explains in great detail exactly what the spending problem is, its nature, its trajectory. And the point I'm trying to make is why don't we get ahead of this ourselves? Let's learn from Europe, not repeat their mistakes, and preempt a debt crisis by attacking the spending problem we have in Washington, cutting, controlling spending, reforming entitlements, getting our government back toward being limited, focusing it on its core missions so it does those well, instead of spreading it too thin, instead of growing the government's mission into all these other aspects of our lives, where we are just accelerating this path toward abandoning the American idea of limited government, equal opportunity, and going with the European, kind of government where the goal of government is to equalize the results of our lives. That's basically the philosophy and the trajectory of our current government.
Paul Ryan is our guest today, member of Congress from Wisconsin and a real leader on fiscal sanity in the United States Congress. Questions or comments are welcome for him this morning on the program at 888-598-8464. We'll also get your emails in here, 701-271-1100. Emails Scott at scotthannon.com. You talk about all the town hall meetings and the listening tour and getting out there. Do you believe that the will is there among the American people for these cuts, for the firewall to be erected on to stop spending? I mean, is it there?
Without a doubt in my mind. Look, I represent Wisconsin. I like to think of Wisconsin and North Dakota as sort of kissing cousins. We're very similar states, very similar cultures. I think a lot of North Dakotans like the Packers as well. Maybe some like the Vikings. I'll pass on that. But to be honest, we come from a very similar culture. And so I think we just understand living beyond your means doesn't work. It's not right. It's cheating. It's your government's not trusting you when it does these things. And so I think the people are ahead of the political class in Washington. And the old adage in Washington is if you propose spending cuts, reform, or entitlements, the other party will get you, they'll demagogue you, and the people will throw you out. I think it's the opposite. I think the people are going to throw out the big spenders. I think the people are going to throw out the people who created this debt monster that we have with us right now. So I really think people get this. They understand this. They understand this kind of profligacy and spending and borrowing. A, we lost 3.6 million jobs since the stimulus got started. B, they know that all this debt means higher taxes, more inflation, lower living standards, less jobs. And I think people know this, and they'll throw people out if they don't fix it. And that's the way I see it.
One state, speaking of North Dakota, that's gained jobs since the stimulus bill was introduced?
Indiana.
North Dakota.
Yeah, well, Indiana's done pretty well too. Mitch Daniels has done a good job down there.
Well, I don't know if they gained jobs.
You guys have that Bakken field up there, don't you?
No question. Which is my point. I mean, we've certainly, thankfully, agriculture and energy are two key components of the North Dakota economy, and so we've weathered the storm. 1 year after the stimulus was introduced, one state gaining jobs, North Dakota. But guess what? Now they're coming for energy. The president this week talking about higher taxes on the oil companies and using the Gulf oil spill to try and ultimately stunt growth that's happening in the energy sector. So
right. Well, is that a shale field up there? I really don't know. Is that?
It is. Yep.
It is. Well, they want to ban fracking too.
I know.
The method of extracting natural gas out of oil, which is to ban fracking, which goes way below the water tables. It doesn't even affect the water tables. I went to one of these fracking rigs just to understand how this stuff works. It's amazing technology, and it's our own. It's under our own soil. We've got like 100-year supply of natural gas. Oklahoma, North Dakota, Pennsylvania, Louisiana, and they have this bill to ban fracking to basically put that stuff off limits. It's just amazing to me. But that is where this Congress is headed, and that's where the president wants to take us. And it's one in which our standard of living is lower, our control of our own destiny and our economy shrinks. And that is why I think, in a district that I represent, which went for Dukakis, went for Clinton, went for Gore, went for Obama, people are outraged. They don't like what they are seeing, and I think they want to see a huge change, not just in 2010, but hopefully in 2012.
Cal, for our guest, Congressman Paul Ryan. Go ahead, you're on the Scott Hennen Show.
Yes, Congressman Ryan, I'm a big fan of yours, and my question for you is, I think the Republicans are going to take control of the House and possibly the Senate. Will they have the political courage to actually restructure the entitlements like you're talking about, or will they play political games and just tinker with the programs and, for example, raising their retirement age? Do you think you can actually restructure?
And then, by the way, an emailer piggybacks on Cal's question by asking, how can we trust Republicans not to abandon us conservatives again?
No, that's why I say it's a legitimate question, because it happened before. So if I have anything to do with it, we will restructure these things. Our problem will be Obama will still be president, and he wants to continue the entitlement culture. He wants the welfare state. He's trying to bring about what they say is the third wave of progressivisms, which is complete contrary to what the founders envisioned, what we're trying to do. We know, believe me, there are a younger breed of conservatives who are leaders in Congress now, different than what we had at the beginning of the decade. Point one. Point two, the debt crisis is right around the corner. There's really no other way to fix this than to restructure these. The way I propose it in my roadmap is a system, that grandfathers the existing population, because it's really about the future consumers of these programs. So if you act now, people 55 and above don't see a change, but you have to have a different system for the younger generation, for 54 and below. So that's what I'm proposing. That's the kind of change and reform you have to stave off a debt crisis and to keep us as an independent, free enterprise-loving country. I'm going to be fighting for this and pushing for it. If we get not when, but if, you can't take these things for granted. If we get the majority.
Now,
shame on us if we don't live up to our principles. Shame on us if we don't learn the mistakes of the last majority and don't and apply those lessons. And
interestingly enough, this president really has outsourced a lot of the policy formulation to Congress. I mean, David Obey wrote the stimulus plan, if you will, and all the spending, and now on the debt, he's saying, "Hey, that's off to you and the commission." And thankfully, you're on that commission.
Yeah, I'm on the commission. I'm not sure what's going to come out of it, but I am on this commission, and the president more or less has. But he's been pushing for the left of center stuff. I mean, he's on healthcare. He was not a voice of moderation. He was actually a voice of moving to the left.
Yeah.
And so, yes, Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid wrote the details of the healthcare bill, but the president was pushing it left all along.
How about after growing the size of the federal government by 25% in about a year, he now says he wants to try and have agencies find 5% in cuts in their budgets? Is that just like okay, that's insulting to me.
Well, it's after an 84% increase in the same budgets.
Yeah.
So we're going to have it under the president's watch. The president signed into law an 84% increase in this category of spending he's talking about. Now they're talking about a 5% reduction off an 84% increase, mind you. We sent the president a series of rescissions. That means that's existing spending that already went out the door, but it hasn't been released from the agencies that we could rescind. We could more than make up that level of savings. We sent that to the president, and they've just completely discarded it. His OMB director, Peter Orszag, said, it's dead on arrival. It's never going to pass Congress, so we're not going to do it. Basically, we basically proposed exactly what he's now saying. So we see this as nothing more than political theater. We actually sent him the bill that would have achieved those kinds of savings that they claim in the speech that they've given, but they won't act on the savings we proposed. So I see the 5% thing as more of a political theater. They know that people are upset about spending, so they give good speeches that appease those concerns. But when it comes to actually acting, what's Congress doing? They're adding spending. David Obey, you just mentioned, he wants to do a $23 billion bill to bail out state governments so they don't reduce teacher salaries or reduce teacher employment. We're going to have the big government, the federal government, bail out big governments of state governments now. We just finished bailing out big companies. Might as well go to big government. I kind of think that's the trajectory of things these days.
Let's squeeze in one more call for Congressman Paul Ryan. John, you have a question. Go ahead.
I believe that everything should be on the table as far as budget cuts. I agree with that. I'm a Democrat. That's where I come from. But what taxes specifically, because I'm a Democrat, we love taxes, would you recommend that they raise?
See, I don't. Maybe that's the difference between us.
So all of us, there will be no tax increase and you can solve the whole problem.
I don't think we should have tax increases. There's a couple of reasons why I say that. Number one, our economy is not growing near to the extent we need it to grow, to create jobs. You've got huge tax increases already coming in 2011. That's passed into law. Then you got another round of tax increases already coming in 2013. All of those tax increases hit small businesses especially hard. They hit investment especially hard, which is how we create jobs. So you got to remember, the president already passed this year $670 billion in tax increases. So that's already happened, $670 billion in tax increases.
How did the president do that?
So he's raising marginal income tax rates, capital gains rates, dividends rates. He's raising another payroll tax on unearning
more taxes.
income.
That's one American paid this year than last year.
No, next year is when the tax increases kick in. So in 2011, you've got a new round of tax increases. In 2013, which was part of the health care bill, a second round of tax increases. That's 670. The president is proposing a total of $1.8 trillion in tax increases in his budget. He's already enacted into law $670 billion in tax increases. But the second point I'm trying to make is, when you bring this new revenue into government, what we're finding is it's not going to the deficit. It's not going to reduce our obligations. It's actually fueling more spending.
Exactly. They're spending it.
That's the problem.
It's crazy.
So I've just been, the earlier caller said, what's to tell me that you Republicans won't screw it up again? Well, the lesson I've taken from my years in Congress, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, which is you bring in all this extra revenue and we think it's going to go to deficit reduction, it always fuels more spending. Spending's the problem. Spending has gone up at double-digit rates over the last 2 years. We have a $1.5 trillion deficit.
Stop the spending.
Spending is the problem. It really is.
It's very simple, no question. Paul Ryan, we're glad you're there. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the time very much. Have a great weekend.
Have a good one.
Take care. Congressman Paul Ryan, House ranking member of the Budget Committee from Wisconsin. More on the Scott Hennen Show on the Common Sense Club. How can you get more common sense than that, huh? After this, your shot at it. Don't go away.